Hi guys, welcome to another video from Little Too Simple. Whenever we think of Steve Jobs, by default, we also think about Apple and its tremendous success in the area of consumer electronics. The names Steve Jobs and Apple are so synonymous that it's very normal to assume that Steve Jobs earned all of his wealth from Apple. But did he? Would you believe us if we told you that more than 80% of Steve Jobs' wealth didn't come from Apple? Yes, the man who was the founder and CEO of the world's most valuable company didn't earn the majority of his wealth from that company. It's unbelievable, but it's true. And yes, we are speaking about the same Steve Jobs who was worth over $10 billion at the time of his death in 2011. In today's video, we'll tell you why a majority of Steve Jobs' wealth didn't come from Apple, and more importantly, where it actually came from. If you like these kinds of videos, then please like this video and subscribe to our channel. And feel free to share this video with your family and friends. Now, let's roll. Music. Even though Steve Jobs founded Apple, for most of his life he had a love-hate relationship with the company. The man whom everyone remembers to be at the helm of Apple, the man who drove it toward tremendous success, actually didn't come into that picture until much later on. In fact, the Steve Jobs we all know and love today emerged only in the last 10 years of his life. He wasn't even a part of Apple for a major chunk of his adult life. Most people think that Steve Jobs earned most of his wealth from Apple because they consider those final 10 years to be his entire life story. And that is the biggest misconception people have about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs founded Apple with his friend Steve Wozniak in the year 1976 when he was just 21 years old. Thanks to the tremendous success of Apple's products, Steve Jobs was worth over $1 million by 1978, just 2 years after founding the company. His net worth grew to $10 million the following year and soared to more than $250 million by the time he turned 25, mainly due to the success of Apple's IPO in 1980. But surprisingly, it was another IPO altogether that made Steve Jobs a billionaire. Unfortunately, Apple's early success didn't last long after the IPO. The company went downhill, leading to several corporate conflicts and power struggles. As a result, in 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he founded. To make things worse, his termination couldn't have come at a worse time. Apple's stock was at an all-time low, and the value of his shares had dropped dramatically from what they were just 5 years earlier. After this point, Steve Jobs was away from Apple for over a decade, and it was during this very decade that he earned the majority of his wealth. After being fired from Apple, Steve Jobs sold all of his Apple stock for about $70 million. He used that money to buy one company and start another. He bought a graphics and animation company called Pixar from Star Wars creator George Lucas for $5 million. And with the rest of his funds, he started a consumer electronics company named Next. In fact, Next was his primary focus. He was determined to turn it into a behemoth that would rival Apple. Pixar was more of a side project. But as fate would have it, despite all his efforts, Next was never a commercial success. Meanwhile, Pixar turned out to be a massive success and went on to redefine the animation industry. Toy Story was Pixar's first commercial hit, and after that, Pixar never looked back, delivering hit after hit every single year. Riding on this success, Pixar went public in 1995, and that's when Steve Jobs actually became a billionaire. You might be wondering, what happened to Next? Well, Next never became profitable. But in a twist of fate, Apple acquired Next for $400 million in 1997, and that same year, Steve Jobs returned to Apple as CEO. By 1997, Steve Jobs was worth between $1 to $1.5 billion, and most of that came from Pixar. And his net worth would have remained around that range, if not for a few events that changed everything. Pixar had a movie distribution deal with Disney since their first film. Pixar would produce the movies, and Disney would market and distribute them. But by 2005, Steve Jobs had several disagreements with Disney's then CEO, and their relationship was on the brink. Just when everyone thought it was over, Disney's board appointed a new CEO. Steve Jobs liked the new CEO, and talks resumed between the two companies. Eventually, Disney acquired Pixar in an all-stock deal valued at $4.3 billion. Since it was an all-stock deal, Steve Jobs received 7.3% of Disney's stock, making him the single largest shareholder in the company. By the time of his death in 2011, his stake in Disney was worth over $10 billion. And in comparison, all the Apple stock he held at that time was worth around $2 billion. We know what you're thinking. Didn't Steve Jobs launch everything from the iPod to the iPhone after he returned to Apple in 1997? Then where did all the money go that he made at Apple from 1997 to 2011? Well, for one thing, he took only a $1 salary per year while he was the CEO of Apple during that period. Secondly, his position at Apple was essentially a job, with fixed targets and stock rewards tied to performance. Whenever he met those targets, he was awarded Apple shares. Over his 14 years as Apple's CEO, he earned around 5.5 million shares of Apple, and at the time of his death, those shares were worth around $2 billion. But even that paled in comparison to the Disney shares he held, worth nearly $10 billion. This incredible story about where Steve Jobs actually earned most of his wealth reminds us of the old saying, never judge a book by its cover. Even though Steve Jobs is known for Apple, the majority of his fortune came from a company on which he spent the least amount of money, time, or effort. Thanks for making it this far into the video. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, then please like and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Until next time, have a good one, guys.